Welcome back. In this video, we're talking about the answer to the question, if I overeat one day, should I undereat the next? And we're just gonna dive straight into it. The answer is no. If you overeat one day, you should not undereat the next day. What you should do is eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. Just try your best to eat normally and stay balanced. And this is really much harder said than done, because being all or nothing with our eating is really satisfying. So it's satisfying, even though it drives us crazy to be yo-yo dieting and weight cycling, constantly gaining and losing the same 10-15 pounds. On some level, it is satisfying, because it means that we get to kind of fling ourselves from one extreme to the other. And even though it's painful and uncomfortable and we hate it, it gives us the satisfaction of surrendering to compulsion. And instead of being compulsive the day after a binge or the day after overeating, instead of trying to regain control, right? Because control can also be compulsive. Instead of trying our best to find a way to claw ourselves back to where we were, what would happen if you took the gentle way out and just ate when you were hungry, ate what appealed to you, and stopped when you were full? And again, it's so much harder said than done. So what I want to do is paint a really clear picture of the damage that we do when we follow a day of overeating with a day of undereating. And then I hope that by painting that picture, I can convince you to try to eat normally the day after a binge or a day after overeating. So now really quick, let me introduce myself. My name is Carrie. I'm the creator of Psycho-Spiritual Wellness, and that is a path to stopping compulsive eating rooted 100% in psychological and spiritual practices. So we're actually going to dig into a little bit of biology before we get into the psychology. So when we undereat, we become wired to binge. We become wired to crave high-calorie foods, and it just increases the likelihood of then undereating and then overeating again. And then it just triggers this really awful cycle that I'm familiar with, and maybe you're familiar with, where we overindulge and then restrict, and then binge and then undereat, and then gain weight and then lose weight, and then everything is just going up and down like a roller coaster, and it's very frustrating. So biologically, here's what's happening. We overeat, we try and compensate by undereating. But when we undereat, your body does not know the difference between you trying to diet and lose weight and an actual famine. And from an evolutionary perspective, the people who stored body fat during famines were the people who survived. So we are biologically and genetically predisposed to favor weight gain, not weight loss, when we are experiencing famine. And restricting your diet and undereating, as far as your body is concerned, it is the equivalent of famine. So it's a really vicious cycle, because also when we undereat, our bodies are wired to dump hormones that cause us to crave high-calorie foods. So this is what creates that phenomenon that many of us are familiar with, myself included, where we eat well all day only to binge at night or overeat at night. And then we eat the worst foods at night. And it's because when we undereat during the day, your body's like, oh no, I'm not getting the calories that I need to survive. So I'm going to dump hormones that make you crave high-calorie foods so that you can't resist them, so that you start thinking about them and craving them and drooling over them and then eventually eating them. We are wired to fail at dieting. We are wired to favor weight gain over weight loss, especially when we're trying to lose weight through restrictive dieting. So it's a very vicious cycle. How can we dig ourselves out of it? And the answer is perhaps maybe frustrating to hear. I know I would have been frustrated to hear this back when I was really struggling with yo-yo dieting. The answer is to stop dieting. and just listen to your body's cues and eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. And yes, this is way harder said than done. And that's why so much of my work involves the difficulty in stopping when you're full. That's the hardest part for most of us. Yes, it's scary to give up dieting. Yes, it's scary to eat the foods that naturally appeal to you, especially if they're the foods that society has deemed as bad and unhealthy. But the scariest part for most people is the idea that if we let ourselves loose, all these quotes, if we let ourselves loose around food, that we're going to eat uncontrollably and we're not going to be able to stop when we're full. And that is what's going to lead to weight gain. So if you resonate with that fear, that is okay, because that's exactly how I felt. And using all of the tools that I share with psychospiritual wellness, I was able to dig myself out of the pattern. So here are some tips. Try to give up dieting, but you don't have to give up dieting yet. If it creates too much anxiety and stress, maybe you focus on the other tools before you give up dieting. But I do highly encourage you to give up dieting and eat the foods that appeal to you, because then you're not going to be creating this hormonal backlash, right? When we undereat, our body dumps hormones to make us crave high-calorie foods. Studies have shown that people who follow intuitive eating, people who eat intuitively, actually eat more fruits and vegetables than people who diet. And maybe, just maybe, that's because when we eat intuitively and we eat what appeals to us, we're not undereating, and so we're not triggering the vicious cycle of creating those cravings for high-calorie foods to begin with. And that is not to say that high-calorie foods aren't allowed with intuitive eating. They absolutely are. But it's just amazing that even clinical research supports the idea that when we don't diet, we end up eating better anyways. And I will add links below to all of my well-researched articles where I talk about these things, and link to tons of clinical studies to back all of this up. I have 2 more tips. The other one is, if you struggle with stopping when you are full, really lean into my Stop, Drop, and Feel tool. I won't get into it here, but it is the bread and butter of my approach. I found that it is astronomically difficult to stop eating when you're full, when you struggle with emotional eating, when you have been using food as a buffer from your uncomfortable emotions for pretty much your entire life. No one ever taught us how to deal with our feelings in school. No one ever taught us, hey, it's okay to feel bad, right? We're constantly bombarded by messages saying that if you're not happy, you're doing it wrong. You need to suck it up and just go. All of these messages have conditioned us to run from our feelings, and so we've gotten really good at running from our feelings. And so when we stop to feel them, they may or may not hit you like a Mack truck. I was one of those people that got hit like a Mack truck. And finally, my third tip, and my perhaps maybe favorite tip, and the reason why I got so fired up for this video to begin with, is because I'm filming this right after Thanksgiving 2023. And I know that a lot of people are struggling with, they overate on Thanksgiving, so then they're very tempted now to undereat, to undo the damage that they did. But we are creating more damage when we undereat after overeating. So here's my motto, my philosophy that I'm so excited about. However long it took you to gain the weight or get bloated or gain the water weight or whatever is making you feel puffy and gross, however long it took to do that, it will take almost roughly the same amount of time to let it all go if you just eat normally. So I know how frustrating these patterns are, and I know how difficult it is not to want to fling yourself in one direction or the other. It's very difficult not to want to undereat after a day of overeating. But when you really stop and sit in that edgy feeling of doing the middle thing, you will find that your body naturally gets back to where it was if you just eat normally, if you just eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, feel your feelings when you want to eat without hunger, aka do the Stop, Drop, and Feel. So if it only took you a day to get bloated and puffy and gross, it might likely, in my opinion, take a day to get back to normal. maybe it'll take 2 days. And if it took a week, if you went like on a week-long, like fender bender, binge bender, whatever you want to call it, if you went on a week-long thingy, it will take roughly 1 week to get back to where you were if you just listen to your body. This is kind of in line with this idea of set point weight theory. So your body is actually wired, your body is wired to want to maintain a set point weight. And so when we do things like overeating or binge eating which affects our weight, your body is actually already on its own wired to get back to the weight that it was. We just have to listen to it. And I will link to my article on set point weight theory down below. That article also points to a ton of clinical research if you want to geek out over that too. So the moral of the story is, if I overeat one day, should I undereat the next? No, please don't. Please do the kind thing. Feed yourself, nourish your body, eat when you're hungry, and try your best to stop when you're full. Do the stop, drop, and feel when you want to eat without hunger. Do the stop, drop, and feel if you can't stop when you're full. And if you do this, it will take only the amount of time that it took to get bloated and puffy and feeling gross. That is the amount of time that it will take to just get back to equilibrium. Your body is wired to rebel against undereating, and your body is also wired to get back to its original weight if you just listen to it. And I hope that this video and all my other resources on my blog and my website and this YouTube channel are able to help you. I will see you in the next one.